Hey, welcome everyone from South Africa. It's Marc Cronje here again with my next birding virtual tour. And today we're going to be off to Namibia, where one of our favorite countries to tour. It's a spectacular country, a very diverse country, so much different habitats in Namibia. It's really quite something. I mean, this tour that I'm going to be taking through is our classic NBZ on Namibia, Botswana, Zambia trip. And yeah, we start basically up in Vic Falls. So we start in Zambia at Vic Falls. We come through from Vic Falls, cross into Namibia, go down to the bottom, we'll come through the Caprivi, then we go down into the Okavango Panhandle at Shakawi in Botswana, and then back into Namibia. And then we make our way through Namibia, visiting Etosha, Land, and then making our way down to the Atlantic Ocean, to Walvis Bay, and then either ending in Walvis Bay or ending in Windhoek. We do have an option on this tour to extend where we go up to the Kunene region and we go up far north, northern parts of Namibia, where we go and target some of the species up there. So things like your Cinderella waxbill, Angola Cape Chat. We do have an extension where we go up into the Kunene River Lodge, that area, and that can be added onto this extension. So yeah, welcome. As you know, I've been doing a couple of these tours, or if it's the first time you're joining me, you can see on the YouTube channel, I've done a couple of different virtual tours so far. I've done Uganda, I've done Costa Rica, India, and then I did 3 on Kruger National Park. And I'm doing them just to keep people interested in the birding, see what we get up to as nature travel birding, the destinations we go to, tours I've led for nature travel birding. And yeah, I'm doing it just to keep busy, keep entertained, and you can imagine with this COVID outbreak and it's dragging on, we're unable to travel there for guide. So if you've enjoyed these, you'll see towards the end of the show or the tour, I will have my PayPal link up if you'd like to make a donation as a thanks for enjoying the tour. So let's get the ball rolling. You can see there I've chosen the Shalo's Turaka. It's probably one of our main targets for this trip. And we get this bird in the thick riverine forest along the Zambezi River. So we get it in Zambia, and we also get it in the top half of Namibia near Katima. Just some of the top destinations we actually visit on this trip. So of course, one of the main highlights of this trip, and we do it right in the beginning, the second day of the trip, we visit magnificent Victoria Falls, the smoke that thunders. It's always a highlight on this trip when we take a morning out of the birding, we go and visit the Victoria Falls, and it's always spectacular spot to visit. When we do the tour in winter, or when we're visiting winter and the water's low, then we do also have the chance to go and visit Devil's Pool and hang ourselves over the edge of Vic Falls. We visit, of course, Etosha National Park, in my opinion, one of the best game parks in Africa. We visit the Okavango Delta, the top of it in the Panhandle. We visit the Land, and then we go down to Walvis Bay and the famous lagoon there for the waders, the flamingos, and some of the seabirds. Some of the top birds we expect on a trip, or the top birds we're targeting on our Namibia trips, things like your Pale's fishing owl. Of course, Okavango Delta is famous for them. Western banded snake eagle, white-backed night heron, Slaty Egret, Damara tern along the coast. They come in and they breed along the Namibian coast. And the Namibian coast near Walvis Bay, between Walvis Bay and Swakopmund, is one of the best places to see them. And we now are also picking up a few individuals that overwinter, which is great for us on our tours. Wattled crane, they nest in Mangu National Park. Rock runner, of course, that's a special for Namibia. We can get them in Windhoek. So even on our Windhoek day trips, we managed to get rock runner, orange wing franklin as well. And then we get them in the Ronga area. African skimmer, they always target birds when we're along the Zambezi and the Okavango. Dune and Gray's lark. Of course, Dune lark is Namibia's only true endemic, so we target that bird when we're around Walvis Bay. And we do also know spots near Sossusvlei. Shalo's Turaka, as you can see, then Hartlop spurfowl, that is a major target when we're in the Ronga area. And then we do target quite a few hornbills on the trip. So on the trip, we have a really good chance for hornbills. We get trumpeter, we get Damara red-billed, we get Bradfields, and we get Monterio's hornbill on the trip. If it's a summer trip, we're targeting a lot of your cuckoos. Most of our cuckoos we will get on this trip. So your Lavalans, your Jacobin cuckoo, thick-billed cuckoo, common cuckoo. And if we're very, very lucky, we sometimes get things like your emerald cuckoo as well. There's no birding trip that solely focuses on birding. Of course, you heard me say we visit Etosha National Park. So at Nature Travel Birding, all of our tours, depending on the client's interest, we do, of course, focus on the mammals and try to rack up a healthy mammal list. A typical tour like this, we can get over 50 mammals on a trip, and some of those sort of the mammals, of course, include the big five, so lion, leopard, cheetah, a really good chance in Etosha. On this trip, we actually get both black and white rhino. In my opinion, Etosha is the best place in Africa to see black rhino now. We have a chance for wild dog when we're up in the north, so coming through Chobe, and then coming through the Caprivi. I've seen them on a few occasions in Mangu National Park. Honey badger we pick up quite often in Etosha. Up in Mangu and Buffalo National Parks, really good chance for sable and rowan, some of our more rare antelope in Africa. And then when we're down on the Okavango, we have a very good chance as well. We do look for Sitatunga. Can be a tough one, but on a couple of tours we have bumped into Sitatunga. So you can, this is an incredible country to tour from a birding point of view. Some really, really great birds which you're going to see. Then also some really, really great mammals. We go from some of Africa's biggest rivers. So we go from the Zambezi and the Okavango right down to the arid desert of Namibia, and then we finish the tour on the Atlantic coastline. So you can imagine a trip like this covering so many different habitats, the things we see, the birds we come across, the diversity. It's always spectacular. A trip like this, even a good trip in summer, we can get well over 300 species on the trip. So let's get the tour going. Grab your cup of coffee or a drink, whatever it is, and enjoy. That's just a map I put in just to outline where the tour runs, and just to give you an idea where we are. You can see in the middle of the map there, the capital of Windhoek. And then right here in the corner there, Kitima Malio close to the M10. Our tour starts just on the other side of that in Zambia. Fly into Zambia, or you can do the tour in both ways. Sometimes we start in Zambia, end in Walvis Bay or Windhoek, or the other way around, starting in Windhoek, ending at Big Falls in Zambia. We move across the Caprivi Strip, that little piece sticking out of Namibia. Then we come across to Etosha, then down there to Tomorrowland near the Tora Conservancy. Then we come down to Umaruru, that's the Irongo Mountains, and then finish the trip in Walvis Bay. As I said, we do offer an extension. We go right up to the north on the border of Angola near Rukana to the Kunene region. And that's where there are some very, very special birds up there. The most famous Angola cave chat, the Cinderella waxbill, some really, really good goodies up there. So just check our website out. You'll see that extension, and that option is also there. Namibia used to be known as Southwest Africa. It was a German colony, and then it was under South African rule for some time, and then they gained independence in 1990. So you can see they're bordered by Botswana on the west, South Africa in the south, Angola in the north, and then that little piece that stretches over there, where Chobe and where the Caprivi is. North of that, you've got Zambia, and then just to the right, obviously at Big Falls. Big Falls, you can view the falls from both Zimbabwe and Zambia. So let's get the birding on the way. That's typically some of the scenes you'll enjoy when you arrive in Namibia. So this was taken on one of my previous tours. Picked up the guests from the airport, did a slow transfer to the lodge, let everyone settle in, some afternoon birdings, and then some afternoon birding. And it's the beautiful sunset from our lodge, from the deck of the lodge over the Zambezi. So you can imagine after a long flight and a lot of traveling, I'm sure you're all very excited to be able to hopefully travel again. It's lovely to sit on this deck and enjoy a nice cold one, watching the beautiful sunset. And as that sun sets, you know, that's when the owls come out. You might have a barn owl come fly by, or the black-crowned night heron make an appearance, and even sometimes the funfoot, the African funfoot, will come strolling by. So there you heard me mention owls. This is your African wood owl, a target for the trip. And the lodge we use in Zambia, these birds are actually resident in the garden. So I've never done a trip and not seen the wood owls there. And they're resident in a couple of the other lodges we visit as well. But normally on the first day and the second day, we actually go to sleep. And as you're sleeping, you can hear these birds busy calling and communicating. It's a lovely noise to hear. On tour, I'm just going to play the call for you. It's a very, very unique call. It's quite often these birds are in a pair. So the birds, they're resident, they breed in the garden, and we often see them in a pair, and then quite often some of the time they have a youngster with them, and then when the youngster's fledging, there can be also quite a bit of action around the lodge gardens. Another great target on this trip, and we're often very lucky in the first couple of days of the tour, we can get him underneath the belt. He's a sought after African finfoot with its bright red legs and bright red beak. We're lucky at the lodge in Zambia, there's a pair that's resident, and often on the boat cruise or even when sitting at the deck, late in the afternoon, early mornings, the bird will come strolling by or walking by. If not, then when we're back in Namibia and along the Zambezi, there's another lodge we stay at where African finfoot is also resident there. What's really interesting with this bird is when it gets disturbed, the bird will often actually come out of the water and onto land, and they're actually very, very agile and fast moving on land, and they're very, very good climbers. They'll actually climb up into the tree, which I always, when I saw it happen for the first time, I found it quite comical to see a duck or a water bird actually climbing up into the tree. You heard me say black-crowned night heron is also resident at the lodge, so quite often one of the late afternoons we'll get the bird coming out from his roost, and then we get really, really good views. And this photo was actually taken on the boat cruise that we do at the lodge, and the bird was actually out in the open posing beautifully. That wonderful orange eye like that. I'm always quite amazed by black-crowned night herons, how their distribution of this species. The species is distributed practically across the world. Almost any bird guide or any bird book you pick up, black-crowned night heron is going to be in that book. I mean, the distribution they found in North and South America, from Europe to Japan, Southeast Asia, and then down in most of Africa. So, I mean, that's quite a wide distribution for the bird, and it's the same species. So, I mean, often people have seen this bird, but it is always, night herons are always exciting birds to come across. One of their sought after birds on this trip as well, and we're very lucky in the lodge grounds. We found them now breeding. This is a collared palm thrush. Also a very, very special bird to see. They are habitat restricted. They do need palm trees, so where there's palm trees, they'll actually breed in the palm trees, and they'll also eat the fruits off of the palm trees. So you need palm trees for them. We do also get them when we're moving. We do have a chance when we're moving through Botswana, moving through Chobe in the town of Kasane. One of the places we stop for lunch, they are also in those gardens. And then one of the many cuckoo species that we'll see on this trip. So the cuckoos are always fantastic birds to see on any trip, and our NBZ, this trip has got a really, really good chance for cuckoos. This specific cuckoo is a white-browed cuckoo. You can see a distinctive white brow, and it's streaky on the chest. We do get coppery-tailed cuckoo on this trip as well. If we're lucky, we get black cuckoo and Senegal cuckoo too. So you can see this trip is very, very, very good for cuckoos. Just going to be playing the call for you to hear this bird. It's very, very bubbly, very beautiful call. You can get it right. Here we go. Always a special bird to see, and often early in the morning you hear these birds calling as you're waking up, having your coffee, and we can go and find them. They're quite unique birds, as these birds are monogamous. So when they breed, they're more monogamous breeders, and often we see both individuals involved in looking after the youngsters, bringing up the youngsters. You heard me mention how this trip is quite good for cuckoos. This is the Jacobin cuckoo. You can see the plain throat there, the white on the throat. The one that looks very, very similar that we get on the trip as well in summer is your Valence cuckoo. The cuckoos, they're always interesting birds. These are inter-African migrants, so these birds will migrate within the African continent. So from southern Africa, Namibia, they move up into Central Africa in the winter, and they come back down in the summer. The Jacobin and Valence cuckoos, they parasitize on a lot of the small finches, your African fire finches, your little waxbills, etc. So they are quite... yeah, I mean, we all know what they'll do. They'll lay their eggs in the nest of another bird and basically let the other bird bring up their offspring. But that's how they've adapted, and that's how they've survived. Another great bird, and one of our big hornbills that we get in Southern Africa. This is your trumpet or hornbill. The guys that have been on tour with us to Uganda and up into the tropics, across to West Africa, Ghana, Cameroon, We get there's quite a few different big, your cast hornbills, your black and white cast hornbills, big like this trumpeter hornbill. But in our trips in Southern Africa, this is the only big hornbill we get. Very, very, very unique call. Sounds like a baby cry. Yeah, really, really unique call. If you don't know what that is and you hear it, you could get quite a fright. These hornbills are really, really unique in the sense is the way they breed. Even such a big bird like this, they will look for a hollow in a tree. So often the big hornbills they look for in the middle of the tree where there's an opening, and they'll actually lay their eggs in there. And the female will sit on the eggs the entire incubation period. And during that time, the male will feed her and look after her while she sits on the eggs. The hornbills are also quite a widely distributed family. So we look for hornbills in Africa, and then we look for hornbills in India. We get some really, really impressive hornbills in India. And we even look for hornbills in other parts of in Asia. So like when I was in Sri Lanka, we got the Sri Lankan grey hornbill endemic to Sri Lanka. So it's also a family of birds that is widely distributed. And often people are looking to try and see as many different hornbill species as possible. And this trip is really, really good for hornbills as well. And then just a typical wonderful, another sunset. I mean, in Africa, we're blessed with our sunrise and our sunsets. And this was taken for the lodge's deck on one of my tours. You can see that's an African open-bill stork. And he also must have just been enjoying the sunset, I guess. So as we move through the Caprivi and we, from our lodge on the Zambezi, we do a couple of boat trips. The boat trips are really, really good for birding. It lets us get quite close to certain target species. And it's just very enjoyable being able to bird from the boats, get close and personal with things. And then we also have some big things, some big dangerous things that we see from time to time. And these are your hippopotamus. This was him giving us a nice yawn there. This is actually a warning. Don't come any close, stay away. Luckily, the guides that we use on the boat, so I've got great experience. They know the hippos, they know how to read them, and they keep a safe distance. And with a good camera, you can get some wonderful shots like that. We have to be careful. I mean, hippos, everyone knows, they're one of the most dangerous animals in Africa. In my opinion, the most dangerous animal. They're underestimated. They can move very, very quickly in the water. Out of the water, they can run at speeds of about 60 kilometers an hour. It's twice the speed of Usain Bolt. So yeah, you're not going to outrun the hippo. You're just going to outrun the people next to you, hopefully. And yeah, with them coming out at night to feed, often we have to be careful. The lodges we stay at often along the river, so we do know there's a chance hippos can be out at night. But we've never lost anyone yet. No, I'm joking. And yeah, we just make sure we warn people, and we're just very, very careful of them. We often joke, we say, you'll hear people say that the hippos are the most dangerous animal on the continent. Technically not. The most dangerous animal in Africa is actually the mosquito because of malaria. And then number 2 is the hippopotamus. And number 3 are the taxi drivers in Johannesburg. So we'll be moving on. You can see we're very, very lucky on the Zambezi. We also, quite often on our trips while we're on the boat, so even on the Okavango, we'll have the big jumbos, the big grey monsters, our elephants coming down to drink. And it's always very special when you're sitting on a boat and you've got a herd of elephants with youngsters, and they come down into the water to drink, and they splash around. Sometimes they'll actually come into the water and they'll swim. And it's so amazing on the Okavango and on the Zambezi. They are so, so tolerant of the boats. So you can often get very, very close to them, and we can really take it all in. And it's always spectacular when you've only been in Africa for 1.5 days and you've already seen hippos yawning like that and African elephants coming down to drink. That's the magic of Africa and the magic of this kind of tour. Okay, so we're moving on now. The next day we take our morning out and we go and visit the incredible Victoria Falls, also known as the smoke that thunders. When I took this photo was taken at the beginning of this year, just before the COVID outbreak. I was actually on tour and I led one of these tours. And in Namibia, it had really good rain, and you can see the water really cascading off there. Before we even got to the falls, we could see the mist coming, all the vapor coming off, and that's where it gets its name from, the smoke that thunders. And before you even see the waterfall, you're already drenched from all the water that is coming in, the spray coming off the falls. A lot of the people that live in Zimbabwe, they believe that is a sign of good luck. The water from the falls spraying onto you. And often when they come home, they'll go and visit big falls, get wet from the water, and then they continue on their way. It's one of the world's largest waterfalls. It's a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and it's one of the 7 natural wonders of the world. The falls, they're 1.7 meters in width, and the height is 108 meters. That makes it the world's largest sheet of falling water. Of course, we all know there are higher waterfalls than big falls, but you can imagine the length and all that water coming over. It will be quite spectacular. It's quite sad now with this COVID outbreak. I mean, the area has had the Zambezi's actually come down in flood, the Okavango has come down in flood, and they reckon the Victoria Falls, it was the most water coming over the falls in the last 40 odd years. I mean, the Zambezi's flown down, Kariba filled up, and the Okavango, the flood waters reached mounds. So it was quite sad not to be able to be up there and actually see that spectacle. Things like that don't come around very often, and it's probably might not happen again in my lifetime. But hey, eventually this will pass and we'll be back on the road again touring. Some of the things we look for around the falls, I mean, the falls themselves are pretty spectacular, but quite often watching the falls, you'll have a trumpet or hornbill flying across the floors. They're a very, very good place to watch for some of our small swifts, African black swift. And then like these guys, your yellow-bellied greenbill, often on the paths around the falls, you'll get yellow-bellied greenbill, white-browed robin chat, these kind of things. They always entertain us while we're spending the time around big falls. And then along the Zambezi, often from the lodge, and then we have a couple of spots we check. Collared practical is also often a bird that is found on this trip along the rivers. You can see they're very, very beautiful birds, and they can sometimes be in very, very big numbers. You'll see them flying over the river, and if you can find an open patch or an open sandbank, often you can get them quite close like this. And again, with us being on the boats, often we get quite nice and close to the birds. One of the smaller passerines that we're looking for on this tour, this is a Camaroptera, and this is your grey-backed Camaroptera. The folks that have traveled Africa know that the Camaroptera is quite an extensive family up in the tropics. There's a couple of different Camaropteras. Down in southern Africa, we get greenback Camaroptera, more common in South Africa. And up in the north and on this tour, we get the grey-backed Camaroptera. We often joke and we call them a camera operator. You'll see now when I play the call, it sounds like someone rapid firing a camera. Okay, so then from our trip to Vic Falls, and after we've enjoyed lunch, there's no birding tour that doesn't visit a sewage works. So no birding tour is complete without making a visit to one of the sewage factories or one of the sewage works, and birds seem to be attracted to these places. And a visit to the Livingston sewage works is always enjoyable and always pays off for us on our trips. And some of the birds we were watching out for there are specials like this greater painted snipe. This is a female. You can see she's much more brightly colored, got the brown in her like that. The male is a lot more drab and a lot more pale in color. This can be a very tough bird to connect with. So sewage works is obviously a good place to try and get the bird. I mean, we often do get lucky, and it's always a great bird to get on a trip. Of course, the sewage works are very, very good for ducks. So you can see the African jacanas there in the background. And then these are Hottentot teals. Do sometimes get the other teals as well, Cape teal and red-billed teal at the sewage works too. And then in summer, a very special bird to get and loves, it's unfortunate, it's water hyacinth, but they love breeding in the water hyacinths. This is a lesser moorhen. You can see that all yellow bill. We also do get common moorhens with the more red in the bill. These are summer visitors down to South Africa or Southern Africa. And from time to time, we get an explosion of them, and they just seem to be popping up everywhere. And from time to time, they're actually a tough bird to connect with. The sewage works can also be good for crakes. In the summer, I've had very, very good luck. I've had African crake there before, and once we had Balion's crake on a tour there as well. So visiting a sewage works, you just never know what can show up. Okay, then we make our way back to our lodge for our second night on the Zambezi for some downtime. and often walking around in the gardens, watching at the water. They've got a couple of water feeders out. You get some of the smaller birds coming in, like this beautifully collared sunbird. And then one of the birds we see quite regularly on this trip, and they're always spectacular birds to see, are our bee eaters. And these are white-fronted bee eaters. They're beautiful colors like that, all sitting on a row like this. They're just spectacular birds to see. They are a family of birds people really enjoy seeing, of course, because of all their colors, and they make for some great photos. They call them bee eaters. They don't only eat bee eaters. They'll often sit from a perch like this, fly off the perch, catch a bee, catch an insect, come back to the perch, and then use that and then beat the bee against the perch to get rid of the sting, and then swallow the bee. But they feed on a wide variety of insects. Often this species will nest in the banks along the rivers. One of the special birds to see on this trip, and one of the targets on the boat trip along the Zambezi. We do have a chance to get them pretty much anywhere along the Okavango, even down onto even down to Congola. We have a chance there along the river there. This is your western banded snake eagle. It's a top bird to see on a trip in southern Africa. They're a bit more common up in the tropics, so our trips to Uganda, they're a bit more easier to find, but it's still a very, very special bird and a great bird to see. You can see this bird was not too impressed with us. The other snake eagles that are more common on this trip are your brown snake eagle and then black-chested snake eagle. And then also another family of birds people love to connect with, the kingfishers. And this is the giant kingfisher. It's one of the largest kingfishers in the world. The only one bigger is the kookaburra in Australia. This is a male. You can see he's got the brown on the top, so he's wearing his waistcoat. The female giant kingfisher, she's got brown on the bottom by her feet, and she's wearing her skirt. These birds are amazing birds. You'll only find them out around water, so they primarily eat fish. I've seen them taking decent-sized fish. I've seen them taking crabs, oysters. Their diet is quite varied, but it is an aquatic kingfisher. You'll only find them around water. With some of our other kingfishers, like your brown-hooded kingfisher, our striped kingfisher, we don't find them around water. Then, of course, there's no boat trip complete along the Zambezi or the Okavango without seeing a Nile crocodile. In my opinion, these two rivers have probably got some of the biggest crocodiles in Africa, and they often, you'll find one or two sitting out basking in the sun, and just look at those teeth like that. Sometimes we're lucky, you'll see them sitting with their mouths open like that, and things like your buffalo weavers, the oxpeckers, will come and land in the mouth and will clean the teeth. Another great bird that we target in the woodland as we move through the Caprivi or even the woodland in Zambia. I mean, our lodge is based just behind our lodge. We've still got some really, really good Miambo woodland, and anyone knows that Miambo has always got some special birds in it. So we do try and target things like your Miambo pied barbet, these beautiful birds. These are your Rhett's helmet shrikes. They are quite common in the Miambo, and they've also got a very, very unique call. You could see their calling in the background of that call was actually just a golden-tailed woodpecker. One of the other target birds in this Miambo woodland in this area, and we know of a couple of good spots for them when we're still in Zambia, and then a couple of spots as we move through the Caprivi strip, is your racket-tailed roller. This is always a sought-after bird in any trip, and luckily with our experience and us moving to the areas, we've managed to stake out a couple of good spots for the species. Other small accipiters are quite common in this woodland and favor this woodland. Things like your lizard buzzard, your geva goshawk. They also enjoy spending time in this woodland. This is a lizard buzzard. You can see the gray, and if you look just underneath the throat, you can see that little bit of black on the throat. They've got that black stripe. And then the cousins to the Rhett's helmet shrikes. These birds are a bit more common. We pick them up on our tours. You can even pick them up in Etosha. These are your white-crested helmet shrikes. I just absolutely love helmet shrikes. When you look at their face, look at their eye, there's actually skin around the eye. And to me, their behavior, they move around in little groups, and the way they behave, to me, they're just absolutely stunning, beautiful birds. Okay, we're going to be now crossing. This is the famous ferry crossing over the Kazangula ferry, or the Kazangula crossing. There you can see the bridge. That's almost done now. This was taken on my trip now in January. So this ferry crossing will soon be a thing of the past. Makes our life a bit easier because crossing here can be a good fun. But I mean, yeah, this is crossing the mighty Zambezi from Zambia into Botswana, and then we move through Chobe, and then we cross into Namibia to our next destination. So, it's always the Kazangula ferry, and the Kazangula crossing is always it's been famous. Any of the old explorers, anyone doing a trip to Southern Africa, everyone will know about this ferry crossing. The bridge has been under construction now for the last 7 years, and I reckon completion will be at the end of this year. Who knows with COVID, maybe not. As we're doing this crossing, and then we cross into Chobe, and we're driving through Chobe, one of the target birds, one of the birds we hope to come across when we move through Chobe, it's our best chance. And then, of course, along the Caprivi is your southern ground hornbill. It's one of 2 ground hornbill species we have in Africa. The other one is north of the equator, and that is the Abyssinian ground hornbill. These guys south of the equator, they don't have that blue on the throat of the northern ground hornbills do. But they also, it's a special bird. This bird is endangered. They're critically endangered. And Chobe is one of the best places in Africa to see them. Our trips in South Africa to Kruger National Park, we also have a very, very good chance of seeing these birds. One of the reasons why they're so endangered is in our parks in Africa, we have a very, very healthy population of elephants. And these birds need often your big marula trees and our big jackberries to nest in. They'll use the same nest. And often the elephants push the trees over them, the nest is destroyed, and they lose a breeding site. The birds don't really help themselves. These birds, they are monogamous, so they'll pair and mate for life. And the female should only lay 2 eggs every 8 to 9 years of her life. Of those 2 eggs that she lays, only 1 will ever survive. They do practice what we call siblicide, so 1 egg is laid, and a few days later, the 2nd egg is laid. That 2nd egg is just basically a backup for the 1st egg in case something goes wrong. So you can imagine often the 1st egg the original, or the 1st egg that's laid, that youngster gets all the attention, all the food, and it ends up out competing its sibling, pushing it out the nest, or trampling and killing it. So there is a lot of conservation projects being done throughout Southern Africa. BirdLife South Africa is doing a lot of work, and I know they're working with their BirdLife partners in Namibia, and they are starting to introduce birds back into the wild. Here in South Africa, in Kruger and on the private reserves outside of Kruger, they're also putting artificial nests up, which the birds are using in, and they're having some great success like that. So there's some great work being done by BirdLife South Africa, Mabula Ground Hornbill project to try and increase the numbers of these birds. And I know with things like what's happening up in where this trip is, so with Namibia, Botswana, Zambia, Zimbabwe, and the Kaza, by the opening up of parks and having the parks as big as possible and more space, it is much better. And we're starting to see an increase in birds like your southern ground hornbills. Remember, the elephants can then move around more. So the more the elephants can move around, the better for the ecosystem as a whole. And then as we move to Chobe, I mean, Chobe is also one of Africa's famous national parks. And a visit to Chobe, you can imagine you're always going to get very, very good for raptors. On one of my previous tours, actually moving to Chobe, we had lions on a kill. And as the lions moved off, we had this massive leopard-faced vulture, our largest vulture in Africa, coming down to feed. He's the can opener. He's got that very, very big, powerful beak. And he can use that beak to actually open up the carcass and get into the carcass to feed. Again, the vultures are also one of those species that are in a lot of trouble in Africa. All of our vultures are listed as critically endangered. And the main threat facing them is poisoning. Guys are often, we know how bad the crisis is with the elephant and the rhino poaching. And the poachers have learned with the vultures coming down and circling above a carcass, it often shows the anti-poaching teams where there's been a poaching incident. So then the anti-poaching teams respond, and then the poachers get caught. So now what they're doing, they're actually lacing the carcasses with poison, with timic, known as two-step, and that is listening to mass killings of vultures. And it's a problem because if our vultures disappear, it's a big problem for the ecosystem. I mean, these guys, they have got a huge responsibility in the ecosystem. They clean the ecosystem, they stop the spread of disease and famine. If they disappear like they have in parts of India, we have serious problems, and it actually becomes a humanitarian issue. So we're lucky still in Southern Africa. We do have, and especially along this tour, and especially in Etosha, we do come across some very, very good vulture sightings and a couple of very special vultures. You heard me say it's good for raptors. There's a tawny eagle photographed in Chobe sitting on top of the tree there, posing quite nicely for us. We have other eagles that we come across. You heard me say your brown snake eagle, black-chested snake eagle. We have martial eagle, one of our biggest eagles in Africa, through Chobe. And if we're lucky in summer, we get some of our migrants, your Wahlberg's eagle, booted eagle, a lesser spotted eagle as well. And then one of the targets we're looking through when we move through Chobe and then down to Mangu along the Okavango floodplain is, in my opinion, one of the most good-looking or one of the most pristine antelopes we have in Africa, your sable. And this is a lovely bull. Often we do get the sable when we're moving through Chobe. Chobe is a very, very good place for sable. But in Mangu National Park, I've never not seen sable. They always, we do manage to collect them, pick them up there, and always seeing a beautiful bull like this is always spectacular. We are birders, so just have a look there on the neck. You can see a yellow-billed oxpecker sitting on the neck of the sable. And then while we're crossing through Chobe and crossing through the Caprivi Strip and then Mangu National Park, we do try and target our Cape hunting dogs, our African wild dogs. It's the only chance on the tour to get the species through Chobe and then in the Caprivi Mangu. So we do try our best to try and pick up these species, speak to guides who have been through the area, speak to the guys managing the reserves and try and get them. They're always, we don't get them on every tour, but they're always such special mammals to see on any trip. I mean, they are our most endangered carnivore in Africa after the Ethiopian wolf. So a trip to Ethiopia and seeing Ethiopian wolves is, I mean, it's always incredible. And our nature travel birding trip to Ethiopia, of course, we take time to try and get the Ethiopian wolf. And then African wild dogs are very, very sought after. We're seeing an increase in them, which is great. Again, with the conservation work that CARS is doing, we're seeing the wild dogs moving around, and they move from Chobe, they move into Buffalo, they move into the Caprivi Strip. So that is very, very great. And a lot of conservation work is being done where they're following the wild dogs, seeing where they're breeding, doing census on them. So hats off to the guys from CARS, the guys from the Carnivore Project up in the Caprivi, Lisa and them. You guys are doing fantastic work with our carnivores in the Caprivi. Okay, back to our birding. As we make our way now into Namibia, we cross the border from to drive through Chobe, and then we cross into Namibia. One of the most scenic border crossings in Africa, in my opinion. Very, very close to the border crossing, we stop to a spot and we look for the Bennett's woodpecker. It's a woodpecker that prefers the woodland and the Brachysteia woodland. And there's a spot where we know of this bird, and often around the lodge, we're very lucky we bump into them. It's quite interesting. This woodpecker does spend quite a bit of time on the ground, where most of the other woodpeckers prefer to be up in the trees. And then one of the highlights of this trip when we get to this part of the Zambezi is going and visiting the southern carmine bee-eater colony on the Zambezi. It's always special to go and see hundreds of these birds breeding. They'll actually make a scraping on the ground, and they make a little hole into the ground, and that's where they lay their eggs. And you can go and visit the colony, and you literally see thousands of these southern carmine bee-eaters, and it's a breathtaking and a spectacular sighting. I mean, you can see these birds, they're just so beautiful. You can get really up close and personal with them, and then they'll fly up like that in their hundreds, their thousands. It's breathtaking. The company Nature Travel Birding, we are involved with conservation efforts to try and protect these birds. And the site we visit, with the help of the lodges in the area, the site is protected, and there is a guard to watch that the bees are not disturbed and to make sure no one comes and steals the eggs or to try and catch the birds. We have had problems in the past where guys will go at night and actually catch the birds because they want them for their feathers. And that's our lodge when we're in Namibia along the Zambezi. Caprivi Matoya, you can see the deck. And in the distance there, you can see the Zambezi River flowing in front of the lodge. The area around our lodge, and as we're moving through these areas, we're always on the lookout for wildlife. One of the greatest things about touring through Namibia and this tour is that the wildlife can be literally anywhere. The wildlife is spaced out, it moves throughout the country, and you can literally bump into wildlife anywhere on a tour. For example, cheetah. I've probably seen, on a fair amount of time, I've seen cheetah outside of national parks on my tours in Namibia. Namibia's got the largest concentration of wild cheetah in the world, and 2/3 of those cheetah live outside of national parks on private land in Namibia. So often while driving around, one of my previous trips, I was going down to Sossusvlei, and we bumped into cheetah walking in the road. So Namibia is doing a fantastic job with their conservation efforts, getting local farmers involved to help protect these kind of things. And this is a spectacular kudu bull we photographed very close to our lodge in the Zambezi. And I was very, very lucky. Often we'll go out at night and we'll go out owling, looking for owls, looking for nightjars. And we came across this serval cat, very, very close to the lodge. The lodge, in the vicinity of the lodge, there's a couple of pans that often attract very, very good birds. And at night, it pays off to go and visit these pans. And sometimes you get lucky, you get something like this coming down to the pans to drink. And then around the lodge owner has actually got a genet. This is a large spotted genet. Is resident in the lodge grounds. On a walk at night, you'll often come across the genet. And then one of the sought after owls that we're looking for when you're spending time at this lodge is our African barred owlet. We're lucky these barred owlets do breed in the gardens. They actually, otherwise it can be a tough bird to see. And it's one of the main reasons we go and visit this lodge is because they've got these barred owlets breeding in the gardens. I'm just going to play the call because they've got a very unique call as well. Such a cute little beautiful owl. I absolutely love owls. So anyone that's been on tour with me will know I do spare a fair amount of time looking for owls at night, but it's always rewarding when you can find one during the day posing so nicely like this. I think one of the main targets we're looking for when we visit this lodge is our Shalo's Turako. The main target for the trip, and the lodge has got them breeding in the garden. So early in the morning we'll go out. We often get rewarded with great sightings of the species. Also very, very unique call on them. The Turako is also a very, very widely distributed family in Africa. So we get a couple of different Turakos. This is the Shalo's Turako. We've had a Ross's Turako coming in to Namibia now at one of their lodges. Our trips to Uganda, Ross's Turako is very, very common. And then we get some great forest Turakos. You get your great blue Turako, yellow-billed Turako. That's one of the great things about birding in the tropical forest in Central and Western Africa. On our tours on there, we really get to come across some spectacular Turakos. I'm very lucky here at my garden in South Africa. I've got purple crested Turako in the garden. And then African skimmers. This is also a sought after bird on this trip. And we are lucky in summer. These birds are very, very common along the Zambezi and the Okavango. They breed on exposed sandbanks. We often on our boat trips, we come across these birds and we can approach the birds slowly and get quite nice and close to them. And then on the floodplains of the Zambezi and the Okavango, we then do go and target some of our floodplain specials and some of our Caprivi specials, and one of them being the lesser jacana, a lot more smaller than their cousin, the African jacana. You can see the orange on the shoulders and the orange on the head. African Pygmy Goose, an absolute stunner of a bird. To me, it's one of the most beautiful birds that we see on this trip, and we're extremely lucky. They're common on the floodplains and very, very common on the Okavango Panhandle. From our lodge at Drotsky's, on the boat trip, we go out and we come across Pygmy Goose, and they're very, very common. But this is the male. It's just such a special bird and such a stunning bird to see these little geese. Another one of the great birds that we're targeting on the tour, this is your Slaty Egret, the yellow legs and the brown throat, and they are a Caprivi special. So moving through the Caprivi and the Okavango, we're always checking floodplains in the hope of getting these birds. Of course, we've sighted and we have a couple of spots, so we always check, and normally we get rewarded with great views of the species. One of the other cuckoos we have on the trip, you heard me say the trip is very, very good for cuckoos, and this is a coppery-tailed cuckoo. We're lucky on one of my previous tours, we actually managed to creep up next to the bird that was feeding on something on the ground. Managed to take this photo, and I just want you to have a look. Look at that beautiful, bright red eye like that. Always one of the fantastic birds of our trip, and a sought after bird in any one of our trips in Southern Africa. I'm lucky here in South Africa, our trips through Kruger National Park and South Africa, we come across this bird quite a bit. This is your saddle-billed stork. For our German supporters, we do operate in Namibia. It used to be a German colony. We do call it the German bird because it has got the colors of the German flag on its face. You can sex this bird by looking at the eye. So you're looking at a female here, you can see the yellow eye. The male has got the pale eye. Always fantastic birds to come across. And that's just some of the Caprivi and the Okavango magic. You can see hippos out the water there, us on the Mokoros moving through the floodplains, birding. It's just, this area will blow your breath away. I always tell people, I grew up watching the David Attenborough programs where they spent a lot of time in the Okavango Delta up in the Caprivi. The area is still wild. This gives you that feel of untouched. There's hardly anybody around. You're often the only vehicle in the parks. You can get out, you can take photos. The elephants come down to drink often while you on the boats next to the lodge. It is still absolutely wild. And it is, every time I'm up there, I'm blown away. It feels like I'm in a David Attenborough documentary, and it's just a fantastic, and you can see from these photos, it's just an absolutely amazing place to spend some time. You've heard me say that these trips are very, very good for raptors. Often when we're moving through the Caprivi while we're driving, we do have some long driving days. We're always on the lookout for raptors, and we're lucky we do get them sometimes perched next to the road. And here you can see a stunning martial eagle perched up like that, the bright yellow eye. This is one of the largest raptors we see on the tour. They're very, very powerful birds. They will catch little antelopes. They can catch steenbok, young impala, young springbok, and even duk. So they are very, very, very powerful eagles. Another special bird to try and see on the tour, we have got a couple of stakeouts for the bird, but it can be a tough bird to connect with. This is an African cuckoo hawk. The sewage works just outside Katima. There was a pair that was breeding there, and often we go there and we visit and have a look in the eucalyptus trees. And if we're lucky, the birds are around. We manage to get some great views on them. And you've heard me say we do focus on wildlife throughout these trips as well. And as we're moving through the Caprivi, the Okavango, down to Etosha, we're literally bumping and we're coming across wildlife as well. I mean, we spend time in Buffalo and Mangu National Parks, and we really, really get to enjoy some fantastic wildlife sightings. And even sometimes the common things like these vervet monkeys or blue monkeys are just incredible to see. I mean, you can see this mom with her little youngster just eyeing us out there. If they're not begging for food and not being a pest, they're actually really, really enjoyable to watch. Them and the baboons are sometimes like looking into a mirror. You see a bit of human behavior taking place and always gives you a good laugh. And then there's these kind of scenes, elephants crossing the river like that, that just you're sitting at your lodge, checking your list of the lovely day of birding, and this unfolds. It just, you know, a guide that's guided throughout Africa and does this all the time. When these kind of things when everything just aligns perfectly and these kind of things take place, you just have to, you take your hat off and it just blows you away every time. The Caprivi has got some very, very big herds of your Cape buffalo or African savanna buffalo. The species doesn't occur in Etosha, so on this trip we need to get the species when we're moving to the Caprivi. And often in Mangu National Park or Babatwata, better known as Buffalo National Park, we come across some very, very big herds of them. And what's been great with the big herds of buffalo that are doing well in this area and doing well on the floodplain, we're seeing a wonderful increase in lions. There's been a great reintroduction program of lion into buffalo and into Mangu, and the lions are starting to do very, very, very well. There you can see these were young males that I photographed on one of my previous tours in Babatwata National Park, and they were actually on a buffalo kill. It's always nice when we're staying in our lodge outside Mangu. You can actually, sometimes you go to bed at night and you can hear the lions roaring from Buffalo National Park. These young males were introduced, and they've actually now formed a pride, and they've bred with the females, and there are cubs around at the moment. That's a great conservation success. Again, it's very great work to the guys of the Quando Conservation, the Quando Lion Project and the Quando Carnivore Project. Lisa and her team, they're doing some incredible work for the carnivores up in the Caprivi area. And that's just scenes from Mangu National Park. I mean, you heard me say, you understand why I say I feel like I'm in a wildlife documentary. You can stand on the floodplain and you want elephant like that, hippos, the impala in the front, warthog, lechwe, the white-faced whistling ducks. Just, it takes your breath away every time. Okay, we've now moved, we're down into Botswana now, so we've crossed the border. We came through Mangu National Park, we crossed the border, and we're at Shakawi, and we're at the famous Drotsky's Lodge or Drotsky's Cabins. This is a sort of it's a great place to stay. It's fantastic hosts, fantastic birding, fantastic food. it's just got everything you need when you're doing a birding trip. I mean, often the elephants come down onto the floodplain. When you're out on the boats, it's just the 2 days we spend here. It's always, you always walk away smiling, and you're always well rewarded. So some of the birds, one of the birds I've been lucky enough to come across on a few occasions in summer here is your pennant-winged nightjar. They are breeding in the woodland around Rodskis. And a night drive out looking for them, we do sometimes get lucky and we come across them. We do also listen to them. They do have quite a unique call. And then one of the other great birds that we target in this area is your white-faced owl. They do breed in the lodge grounds, so it's one of the places where we get the bird on the tour, and we're very lucky. We know where they're breeding and they're not being disturbed, so we come across them. And sometimes during the day, you can go and check the roost, and you'll see them there on the roost during the day. And you can get some great photos. And there's us now starting our boat trip. This is one of the most anticipated, one of the most exciting boat trips we can do on the tour. We're on the Okavango River. You can imagine on the Okavango River, one of the main targets for the entire trip is on this morning, and it is the Pels fishing owl. You can imagine the Pels fishing owl, sorry, made a mistake. There's the beauty. This bird is a special, special bird to see on any of our trips in Namibia, and we're very, very lucky from Shakawi. The guys that operate in the area know where the birds are, and I've never missed a bird on the tour. When you see this big orange, I call him the orange teddy bear of the Delta. When you see this big orange owl like that out in the open, it just takes your breath away, and it's always a special, special bird to see. The trip is so exciting because you see the Pels fishing owl, and then you can imagine you're on the Okavango River and you're targeting some of the real Okavango specials. So we go for things like your Lapula cisticula, your chirping cisticula, greater swamp warbler. We get western osprey, the African skimmers, the Slaty Egret, rufous-bellied herons. Fish eagles come quite nice and close. You saw there the picture of the grey-headed Kingfisher. It was the previous photo. So it's got some really, really spectacular birding on this boat trip, and it's always one of the boat trips that blows you away. This is also one of the special birds, and the guys running the boat trips know where they roost during the day. This is your white-backed night heron, a major target for the trip, and we're always very lucky on this boat trip. We managed to come across the species. And there you can see, you heard me mention the chirping cisticula. They call it a chirping cisticula. Got a very, very unique call. It sounds like the bird is chirping. And this is another one of our special birds. We're very lucky. Sometimes the Livingston sewage works, I've had them, but often our chance for this bird is when we're on the Okavango. This is your Allen's gallinule. You can see that blue frontal shield like that. And often if we approach the bird slowly and quietly, you can get a bit close, and we can often get some great photos of this special bird. And then you hear me say fish eagle. I mean, it's a common bird once you're along the rivers, but I believe this is one of the most iconic birds of Africa. And it is the bird, I call it, I tell this bird is the sound of Africa. Oh, gives me goosebumps. When you hear that call, it just absolutely gives you goosebumps. It's just, yeah, it's when I think of it, I think of being on the Okavango, being on the Zambezi, being in Kruger birding, and it's just a, yeah, spectacular bird, and that's why people come to Africa. They are actually related to the bald eagle in the States, for my friends from America. So they're within the same family. The bald eagle is just much bigger. And then your African open-bill storks. These birds are also quite common, more in the floodplain areas of the Okavango, where there's slits in their beaks, and they mainly feed on freshwater snails. And they use that slit in the beak to crack the shells of the snails. Again, you heard me say earlier on how we target the bee-eaters. And this is the smallest bee-eater in Africa. This is our little bee-eater. Look at those colors on these birds. They're just absolutely stunning, fantastic birds. And then just another floodplain scene. This was taken in winter, so the water is quite low, and you can see all the buffalo that have come onto the floodplain. And again, sitting on a boat or sitting on a floodplain, enjoying this, having a cup of coffee, and having some rusks in the mid-morning, rusks or traditional biscuits we dunk in our coffee. There's just nothing better. One of the main targets we're targeting once we leave Dratskys and we come into Mangu National Park is your wattled crane. These wattled crane, they breed on the Mangu floodplain, and we go out into the floodplain and check a couple of the spots where we know where they breed, and we're very, very lucky on the trips we do come across them. Sometimes we're lucky when we stay at our lodge just outside Mangu, we even have them across the lodge. Another one of the targets, one of the Caprivi targets, is your long-toed lapwing. It's a fairly common bird once we're along the Zambezi and the Okavango. It's always nice when we get quite nice up and close to them like this. They are very, very beautiful birds. And then always a special bird to connect with. This is a rufous-bellied heron. These birds prefer the backwaters, still the calm waters along the Okavango. So often we'll go out, and once the waters are pushed over and where they form puddles, we'll go and check out those pans and those puddles. And we do, with a lot of searching, we often do come across them. We know a couple of places the sewage works, they often can be there. We know a couple of places where the birds are resident, so we just have to keep checking when we do come across them. And another great bird to see along the Okavango is your black heron. What's very, very unique about this bird is how it catches prey and how it fishes. So you can see he's halfway in a pose. They'll bring their wings up like that and actually make shadow over the water. The little fish come to shadows and the bird can catch the fish. It's an amazing behavior to watch. And every time I see it, remember the first time I saw it, it takes your breath away. Then moving through Mangu, we're always on the lookout for our giant eagle owl, or your Barrow's eagle owl with these beautiful pink eyelids. It's one of the largest eagles in Africa, or one of the largest owls in Africa. And these birds, they will actually catch other birds. Very, very good at catching other owls and other spur fowls. Mangu National Park is quite good for them. We know a couple of places where there's a couple of big marula trees that they prefer in the park. And quite often we do get sightings of the species during the day. And another great bird to come across as we're moving through Mangu is your crimson-breasted shrike. This bird does extend into Etosha as well. So as we start in the dry, arid parts of the country, we start to pick up this spectacular bird. And then violet-eared waxbill, the same thing. More common in Etosha, but sometimes as we're moving through Mangu and we're watching the little birding parties coming in, we get great views of these spectacular birds. And then another one of our inter-African migrants. The trip is very, very good for roller, especially in our summer. So you've already seen racket-tailed roller. We do get the common lilac-breasted roller. The visitor from Europe, our European migrant, the European roller, comes down from southern Europe, Spain and Portugal into Namibia. And then we get the inter-African migrant, your broad-billed roller, present here in our summer, and also a fantastic bird to see. Why they call them rollers? It comes from the way they display. When these birds fly up in their display, they'll actually roll in the air, and that's where their name comes, roller, where it comes from. This is a juvenile sparrowhawk, a juvenile shikra that we managed to photograph on our little tour, on my previous tour, and we're very, very lucky. We get to experience these small birds on our tour. Sorry, jumped there. On our tour, often in the woodlands, as we move into the woodlands slowly, we get lucky and we do get to enjoy sightings of the small accipiters. One of the great things about spending time in Mangu National Park, you heard me say, is the rare antelope and the rowan antelope. Mangu is famous for its rowan, and any trip through Mangu, you'll come across rowan antelope, and it's just a spectacular antelope to see. And they're quite common there, but the rest of Africa can be a tough antelope to see. And just a typical sighting at the waterhole in Mangu National Park that we visit. Sometimes you're lucky, you get the big elephants coming down to drink, giraffe coming down to drink, rowan, sable, and there's a resident leopard that spends time in the area. And sometimes late in the afternoon coming back, you bump into the leopard on the road. It's a red lechwe moving through the Okavango floodplain. These are specialist antelope that live in the floodplain. Very, very powerful legs, and you can see that arch back like that for being able to run and move through the floodplain. Then you heard me say we do get leopard. This is that leopard I was telling you about. I went to that waterhole in Mangu and we sat there just enjoying the elephants. Then coming back before gate closing, we had this young male walking on the road. Beautiful. I took this photo through the grass like that. To me, it's just with the grass in front of their face. It's just made for a wonderful photo. It's always special seeing leopard in the Caprivi. They're not that common, but we're seeing an increase in them. And as we drive slowly, we're watching. From time to time, we're lucky we get them on our tours. Of course, you always have a chance when you make our way to Etosha. And you heard me say, when you saw that one of the yawning, often on the Caprivi floodplain, while we're out birding, we always keep an eye out for these guys. It's the grumpy hippo. The Okavango River is full of hippos. There's hippos distributed all along the Okavango River. And there's our lodge for the evening. This is Mangu Lodge, situated. That's the Okavango River in front there. And on the other side, the bush on the other side, that is Botswana, or Buffalo National Park. And they've got this wonderful open deck. You can sit in early in the morning having your coffee, and you can bird. And you have things like skimmers flying by. Late afternoon, they've got bathawk that come flying by. It's just a lovely lodge with some great birding in the gardens too. Like these Mayor's parrots. Mayor's parrot is actually in their garden, and I walk around the garden early morning. We often get rewarded with great views of these birds. And one of the targets here are the brown firefinches. They actually come into the lodge gardens early in the morning, and I walk even around sometimes while you're having breakfast. They pop up on the breakfast table. Not a bad bird to have on the breakfast table, your brown firefinches. And then your heartlubs, or your white-rumped babblers. They're also resident in the gardens of Mangu National Park, Mangu Lodge, and often you will hear these birds before you see them. You can hear they've got a very, very loud noise. Very, very vocal birds. Then now one of the target birds we're looking for when we're along the Caprivi and the lush riverine vegetation is our African green pigeons. They prefer the fruiting trees, so we need to find where there's figs. But often in summer, when the trees are all in fruit or the jacoberries are in fruit, we manage to get some good views on them. Those are very, very, very beautiful pigeons. Okay, so we've left Mangu now, and we're making our way through the woodland between Davundu and Grundu, and we make a very, very special stop in a known area for one of the target birds. This is the Sousa's shrike. The only place in southern Africa you can see this species. They're much more common in East Africa, but between this woodland, there's a little patch of woodland where these birds come in and they've bred successfully. And we spent some time in this area really looking at these birds and trying to get views of them. They are a tough bird to connect with. Luckily, through the years and being able to bird the area, doing recce trips into the area, we have found the area that they prefer. And quite often, it's not the best of walking through a thick sand, but we often are rewarded with views of these birds. Our great supporter and our great friend Mark Paxton of Shamvura Camp, he actually was the first person to find these birds in Southern Africa and has done some great conservation work on these birds. So heads off and hats off to you, Mark Paxton. And then one of the other birds that we in the same woodland that we're targeting, they can be found throughout the Caprivi, but prefer these woodlands, the Tawania Rundu, are your rufous-bellied tits. These are they're fantastic birds to see, can be tough birds, but we do know a couple of spots where they're a bit more common, and with a bit of perseverance, we can often get them. Very, very unique calls. You can see they've got a very, very unique call like that they'll make, and that's how we often come across them. Some of the other birds that we're targeting when we're in this woodland are things like your Koki Franklin. It can be a tough bird on a Namibia trip, much more common on our trips in South Africa and in Kruger, but we are lucky we do get the Koki Franklin from time to time. We're also looking for things like your striped kingfishers, green-capped aeromomola, and tinkling cisticula when we're walking in this woodland for the Sousa shrike. The little bee-eaters are there around, and we're always keeping an eye. There is an area around where the Sousas is where we also get racket-tailed roller. Often we keep our eyes to the sky as well. We're watching for some of the raptors coming over. I've had hawk eagle in the area before as well. Okay, we're making our way now off to Etosha. So that's a typical scene from Etosha National Park. In my opinion, Etosha National Park is one of the greatest game parks on the continent. Just the diversity. I mean, they've got just some incredible wildlife is seen in this park, and it's just the combination of the big salt pan where the park gets its name. Etosha means the great white place, named after the big white salt pan. And the wildlife sightings, the birding, they're just off the charts. I mean, and this is just a typical scene you get out on the plain with all the springbok, the zebra, the wildebeest out like that. It's just absolutely spectacular. Etosha is a massive park. It's 22,270 square kilometers. So it's a very, very, very big park, one of the biggest parks in Africa. You can see the salt pan from space. The pan is about 120 kilometers long, and it takes up 25% of the park. So you can hear it. It's quite a thing. And quite often in the good rainy years, the pan will fill up with water. When that pan fills up with water, it becomes a great breeding, one of the only breeding spots in Namibia for your flamingos, both greater and lesser flamingos. There can be over 1 million flamingos that come into the pan in the wet years. So like now, with a very, very good rain that Namibia has had, that pan will be absolutely incredible to see with that pink and all the flamingos across it. This place, Etosha National Park, you can imagine, has got some great targets that bird-wise and mammal-wise that we go for. One of the main birds we're trying to see when we spend time in Etosha, we come in on the Namatoni side from Van der Lens Gate, and we go up to the Andoni Plains, and we're looking for the blue cranes. The best part in the park to see them, a healthy population of blue crane there, and it's always one of the big targets on the trip to get. Sometimes we get very, very lucky and we come across them and we get some very close-up sightings of the blue cranes like this. Other targets that we're looking for, of course, is your beautiful Kori bustard. It's one of the world's largest flying birds. The males can weigh up to 12 kilograms and the females 6 kilograms. Amazing to think that that bird can fly. We're lucky in Etosha. These birds are very, very common. When we spend our time up on the plains, some of the other birds we're looking for are your red-capped, fawn-colored, spike-heeled, and your pink-billed larks. The Andoni Plains is very, very, very good for the lark. And in the lodge that we're staying at just outside Etosha, just close to Namatoni, is got a very, very, very good. They've got black-faced babblers in the garden. And it's actually the main reason why we stay at the lodge. It's pretty much one of the guaranteed places on the tour where you can come across this bird, and it is a sought-after babbler for the tour. When we're coming down from the Caprivi, we do sometimes stop at another place where we've seen the birds from time to time as well. These Chestnut Weavers, they also breed in the lodge grounds, and if you're there in summer, they're in their beautiful chestnut breeding plumage like that, and they're very, very beautiful birds. And then in wetter years, around the pans, I mean, chestnut-banded plover is a bird that we're more targeting in Walvis Bay, but they do come into Etosha quite, and they can actually be quite common along some of the bigger pans and some of the big waterholes in very, very good, in years where we've had very, very good rain. And then on my previous tour, we had this absolutely fantastic special sighting of this marsh owl up at Andoni Plains. So it was a wet year. We had some really, really good rain. And this bird was just out down on the ground like this, and it was just absolutely spectacular to see this bird so close like this and be able to look at them. It's not an easy bird to see. We normally flush them while we're walking through the floodplains. Sometimes just on walks the lodges, I've flushed them a few times, and not often we get one on the ground like this. One of the more common birds we get when we're moving through Etosha is this northern black Quahog. It was recently split from the Quahog we get down in South Africa. And now it's two different species. Up in Etosha, we've got the northern black Quahog, and down in South Africa, we've got the southern black Quahog. Also a very, very, very unique call. You know, sometimes when you drive past in a safari vehicle, they'll scream at you like that. And then one of the other great birds to see in Etosha are our corsair. This is our double-banded corsair. They prefer the lovely open areas we get in parts of Etosha. And then very, very close to Alali Camp, which is in the middle of the park, there's a couple of places which is very, very good for Birchall's corsair as well. To me, they're just such sexy, such good-looking birds. These corsairs are absolutely lovely. And then Etosha, of course, is famous for its wildlife and its mammal sightings. You heard me say, in my opinion, it's the best place in Africa to see your critically endangered black rhino. And we're very, very, very lucky on our tours to Etosha. We often get great sightings of these incredible mammals on our trip. I mean, when we stay at Ukukuyo and can visit that waterhole at night, if you don't see a black rhino at the waterhole at Ukukuyo, you need to basically get your money back. Namibia, the government of Namibia and Etosha has done some exceptionally great work and good work in protecting the rhino. They've got a great anti-poaching team. We know that our rhino across Africa are in great danger and in trouble for the poaching. They're killing both the white and the black rhino for the horns. I believe the horns that can be used medicinally in the East. And that's led to people now are willing to pay a very, very large amount of money for the horn. The horn is of more value than gold. So you can imagine they'll come out, kill the rhinos for the horns. So they now need to be protected, and the parks are doing some great works. Some of the rhinos in Etosha, they have been dehorned. They removed the horns off of the rhinos as a protective measure. And hey, if that's going to work and we can protect them, then so be it. But it was lovely to have this sighting of this family of black rhino come down like this. The park has also got white rhino in it. So often in our trip to Etosha, we managed to get both rhino in Etosha National Park. The park is exceptionally good for its cats, and the area around Namatoni is very, very good for cheetah. So when you're spending time there, really try to focus and really try to get cheetah. And quite often we do get lucky. We'll speak to the guides that are in the park daily, speak to colleagues, speak to the rangers, and try and find out where they've been hanging around. It's always a special mammal sighting to get on a tour with your cheetah. Lion, beautiful animals, always special to see when they're up to something. So early in the morning, walking through the open plains like this, spectacular sighting, and they are fairly, fairly common to Etosha. I've never done a trip to Etosha National Park and not seen lion. Of course, sometimes they can give you the runaround and they can prove tough, but we do spend a couple of days in the park, and often we do come across some great lion sightings as well. Spending the night in Ukukuyo watching the waterhole, often lion do come down to drink there as well. The park has got both species of hyena in it, so this is your spotted hyena, and they do have their cousins, the brown hyena, in the park as well. So it's always good spending time in the park, managing to try and connect with these guys. Spotted hyena a little bit easier, especially if we know when they're denning and they're quite active at night around the camps. The brown hyena, it can be a bit of a tough one to see. And that's just, again, it's your springbok crossing the road in the center of the park, very close to Halali. And you just get these wonderful scenes, springbok in the road, the open plains, one tree like it. It's like being back in East Africa. It kind of reminds me when I spent time for nature travel birding in Kenya and Tanzania. It's just special when you get these scenes like this. That's a typical waterhole scene. So very important with Etosha, especially in the dry months, is to visit the waterhole and spend time at the waterhole, because a lot of the animals will come down to drink, and a lot of the action, the kills, etc., will happen at the waterholes. And here you can see Namibia's national animal, the oryx, the Hyacinth, coming down to drink. This is at Rietfontein, a waterhole in the middle of the park. We pitched up there at about lunchtime, and we had this wonderful big herd of elephants coming down to drink like this. Out of interest, some of the elephants in Etosha, they reckon the elephants in Etosha are some of the tallest elephants that we have in Africa. And you'll see, if you look at a lot of these elephants, they don't have very big tusks. They have no tusks at all. The theory is behind it is the elephants, there's a lot of wear and tear on the tusks of the elephants in Etosha, because they're digging in the salt pan for minerals and for water. And that puts a lot of wear and tear on the tusks, and the tusks will break off. The males, there's a lot of competition around the fresh water, and a lot of fighting around the fresh water in the park, and that breaks off the tusks. And then leopard. Leopard is widely distributed throughout Etosha National Park, and from time to time we get very, very lucky and we come across them. They can be, a leopard is always an elusive and can be a very, very tough animal to see, but quite a bit between spending time in the Caprivi and Mangu and then Etosha, we often get very, very lucky and we do come across leopard sightings as well. And then one of the endemic antelope that we find in Etosha and in Namibia is your Damara Duk-Duk, or your Kirk's Duk-Duk, quite common on the Namatoni side, on Duk-Duk Loop in Etosha National Park. And then the impala we see in Etosha are your black-faced impala. They were introduced into Etosha. They actually come from the northern parts of Namibia, from the Kunene region. And during the war, they introduced them into Etosha so they could breed them there and just have a population there in case the war wiped out the ones in the north. And that population has just stayed in Etosha National Park. They've got black on the front of the face, where your normal impala don't have that. Just another beautiful scene that we have at the waterhole, the springbok in the back with your virtual zebra in the back. Okay, back to the birding. One of the more common lark species that we get in some parts of Etosha, this is your rufous-naped lark. And you can see if you look at this bird, you look on the top of the head, that crest is a little bit lifted up or erect, and you can see that red crest, hence the name, the rufous-naped lark. Very, very unique call. Also, a very great bird to get. This is your Redneck Falcon. They're quite common in some parts of Etosha, just north of Ukukuyo Rest Camp. We spend time and we visit up there early in the morning, and we very often get quite lucky. We get Redneck Falcon, and we do also sometimes get his cousin, the Lana Falcon, in that area as well. We do have to watch the two. They look very, very similar, but you can see in this bird all that red coming around the neck like that. They often will perch on a tree like this or perch in vegetation near the waterholes, and they'll wait for the seed eaters, the doves, the Namakwa doves, etc., to come down and drink, and they'll shoot through and they'll catch them. And that's always exciting and very entertaining to watch. Okay, we now we make a stop at a Lali camp when we move through Etosha. So when you move from the Namatoni side through the park, we stop at a Lali for lunch before we make our way to southern Etosha, to Ukukuyo. And we stop not just to eat, but one of the main stops that we have in Ilali camp is for the sought after violet woodhoopoe. The birds are resident in the camp, and a walk around the camp playing a bit of call, often we can get the birds. If we miss the birds, we do get lucky. We have a good place for them near Bruntberg, and then in the Eronga areas, we know we're placed for them as well. But it's always a good bird to get, and Ilali is very, very good for them. And then, as you heard me say, with Etosha and around Ilali, it's very, very open plains. There's often kills in the area, can be very, very good for vultures. And this is your white-headed vulture, one of our more rare species of vulture. Our most common one we get in the park is the white-backed vulture. And it is always special to come across and get views of these these white-headed vultures. You heard me say how the vultures are in trouble in Africa and are critically endangered. So it's always special to see these birds coming down, feeding on the carcass or on the wing like this. And then we've been very, very lucky in the last from time to time in Namibia. We've had a stray or a visiting vulture in Namibia. This is an Egyptian vulture. So I had this bird actually on one of my last tours in Etosha. And I know there was a sighting of the bird in Etosha about 2 weeks ago. It's always good when we're spending time in Etosha to keep our eyes in the sky and check our vultures for one of our visiting specials to the park, so Egyptian vulture. Then you heard me say great for raptors. This is again a tawny eagle, a much darker form of the bird. And this was also photographed coming into Etosha early one morning. Okay, that's the waterhole at Ukukuyo. This is probably one of the most famous waterholes in Africa. It's been featured on many documentaries and photographs, and it's an absolutely spectacular waterhole. I mean, you've got this waterhole in front of your camp, and you can sit there watching the waterhole, and during the day, you've got big numbers of animals coming down to drink like this. And then at night, we often have the black rhino coming down to drink, lion. I've had leopard there before. It's absolutely just a spectacular place to spend a night or two when you're in Etosha, because some of the rooms we can get, you can sit in your bed or on your veranda looking down onto the waterhole. So you can literally watch the waterhole the whole night, and throughout the night, a lot happens at this waterhole. So it's always the exciting part of the trip, because you just never know what's going to come down to the waterhole. If you look to the right, you can also see the big sociable weaver nest in the tree. In Ukukuyo Rest Camp, the acacia-pied barbets are resident in the camp. Often if you walk around, you just look for the old holes from the woodpeckers. They will use those barbets. And then the birchall sandgrouse, the Namakwa, and the birchals and the Namakwa sandgrouses also come down to the waterhole at Ukukuyo, often late in the afternoon. They'll come down to drink, and it's quite spectacular seeing hundreds of these sandgrouse coming down to the water to drink as the sun is setting. This is a birchall sandgrouse. It's the male. You can see the gray on the head. And what's also unique about the sandgrouses is the males will go into a waterhole. They'll wet their chest feathers and they'll fly off to the chicks and let the chicks drink the water off of the chest feathers. So ladies, it can be done. Us men can look after children. And then one of the other bee eaters we're targeting when we're in Etosha, you heard me say it's a great trip for bee eaters. This is your swallow-tailed bee eater. You can see that fork in the tail like that. And again, just look at those stunning colors with that morning light like that. I mean, as a birder, what more can you ask for? There's your sociable weaver there. You heard me say they're resident in the camp. In that photo, you saw the big nest there on the right. These little weavers are absolutely incredible little birds. They're very small birds. They're only about that big. And these guys build a massive, massive nest, often in a dead tree. They've done research and they reckon in a nest there can be over 1 million birds living in a nest, and the nest can weigh over a ton. It is incredible to think how birds can collect grass material to make a nest that can be that heavy and that big. It's absolutely amazing. And often while we're driving through southern Namibia, northern South Africa, and Etosha, you'll actually see where the tree has collapsed because the nest got so heavy, and in the birds are rebuilding the nest up in the tree. And this is also one of the special birds we'll target around the Okukuyo area. This is a rufous-eared warbler. They do prefer the open areas, and we have a couple of great spots for the bird. It's always a very special bird and a very good-looking bird to see. Very, very unique call. I'm going to play the call for you. Okay, so it's always sad when we have to, but eventually we do have to leave Etosha National Park and we have to continue with the tour. We've still got some very good birds to try and see and some extraordinary landscapes coming up. And we're making our way into the Tomorrowland area of Namibia. This is the arid, dry area of Namibia, that middle area of Namibia. And it is, in my opinion, one of the most beautiful places I've seen on the continent. And I just absolutely love spending time in Tomorrowland. You just get these wide open vistas. There's some incredible birdings, and it's just absolutely wild out there. A lot of people think, the desert doesn't have a lot of wildlife. Apart from the small things that's in that desert, this Tomorrowland area still has got a lot of desert-adapted wildlife. For my trips that I've done through the area, we still see desert-adapted lion. We've got the desert-adapted rhino that the Save the Rhino Trust is doing work with, especially in the Palmbach area. And of course, the sort of the desert-adapted elephants of northeast Namibia. We actually run an very, very interesting trip that we actually go walking through this area. And we do it as a Nature Travel Namibia. Our sister company runs the Save the Rhino walk that donates funds to Save the Rhino Trust. And we actually go into the Palmbach area and we actually go tracking with the guys looking after the black rhinos. And we spend 5-6 days actually tracking the black rhino, and then often on that trip we've come across desert lion as well. There's leopard and there's cheetah in the area as well. So when we're making our way to Brandberg, to our lodge that we stay at there, we're often on the lookout for the desert adapted elephants. These elephants move a lot. They'll move a lot between the different rivers. So they'll move up the Halb and the Upper Halb River and the Halb River. And it can be tough to find them, but sometimes we do get lucky and we'll find them along our way. Or we even sometimes find them at our lodge at Brandberg. And we do know a couple of the rivers that they tend to use. So we'll go into the dry rivers and we'll go searching for them. And this was taken as we were coming up to Brandberg, just very, very close to the Halb River. And they're very, very special elephants to see. They haven't been reclassified yet. They're still the same species, Loxodonta africana. But they're a lot more shorter than their cousins, the African elephant, and they've got very, very big feet for increasing the surface area for walking through the sand in the desert. It's very, very difficult to know how many there are exactly. They reckon there's about between 300 and 500 elephants, desert-adapted elephants, and these guys move in a massive area. So northeast Namibia, and they'll move up and down the rivers. They'll move sometimes down to the coast, and they move to the Tweefontein, and even sometimes to the Palmbach and then to the Brandberg area. So they move in a massive, massive area. And it's always very special when we do manage to come across these spectacular animals. So we make our way to Brandberg and we stay at a lodge very close to Brandberg Mountain, Brandberg White Lady. And this lodge is on the river. The river's barely, I've only seen the river with a bit of water in it once when it was in flood. It's on the Halb River. And it's got some great birding in the gardens. One of the main targets we're looking for when you spend time here is the Kaap's tit. Very, very similar. You've been on tour with me in South Africa. We've got the southern black tit. Very, very similar. But this bird is restricted to the dry, arid areas of Namibia. And some of the other birds we're looking for, your bare-cheeked babblers. An absolutely stunning babbler. just often we do hear them, and they are resident in the camp. Often where the guys have been watering the gardens where there's a bit of water, you'll find bare-cheeked babbler. Ruppel's parrot is also a main target when we come into the Brandberg area. It's always good to get them, and they often are in the campsite. We do also have a very, very good chance of getting them when we make our way to the Eronga area. Another great bird to get in this area is your southern pied babbler. So you can hear this tour is very, very great for some really good families of African birds. Your babblers, your bee-eaters, our hornbills, your taracos, our cuckoos. You can see we really try and target, and we get really, really good species and members and individual species of family that you can't get anywhere else, only found in Namibia. Or some of them, they say they touch into Angola, but at the moment, it's very, very easy to find these birds in Namibia. That is your Damara red-billed hornbill, a different species from the southern red-billed hornbill we get in South Africa. And that is your Monteria's hornbill. You can see the spotting in the wings. Quite a big hornbill, a little bit similar to the crowned hornbill that we get up north from the Caprivi and then in South Africa. But the crowned hornbill doesn't have those white spots on the wings. And then, of course, being in the dry arid areas, you can imagine dry arid areas also attract different birds. One of the main targets we're looking for around the Brandberg area is your Ruppel's Quahog. And we know a couple of places where these birds hang around. Sometimes early in the morning you can hear them calling, and that can help narrow it down. You heard me say in Etosha, we sometimes get your Birchall's courser. We know of some very, very good spots around the Brandberg, around Brandberg Mountain, where we can get the Birchall's courser. Again, I absolutely love coursers. So when you look at them, it's fantastic, such a good looking bird. And then a very, very special bird to get is your Benguela long-billed lark. These birds have got a very limited distribution in Namibia, and the area around Brandberg and then around the small little town of Ois, which we stop at for lunch before making our way to Eronga. We know a couple of spots there where we scan and try and pick up these birds as well. And then one of Namibia's special birds, in my opinion, one of the target birds and one of the sought after birds of any trip to Namibia is the Herero chat. This bird can be quite tough to locate. I mean, the area it's found in, they want hillsides with vegetation. So there's a couple of areas throughout Namibia which is good for this bird, and with enough searching and listening, we often do come across it. And the area around Brandberg, just north of Brandberg, is a couple of spots where we know for this bird, and we do spend some time trying to get the bird for folks that are interested. Other good areas are when you're coming down the Speershoogte Pass to Sossusvlei. Another good area for the bird. And then just to give an idea of some of the beautiful scenery we are currently in Brandberg, and there you can see there in the background is the Brandberg Mountain. The Brandberg Mountain, it is Namibia's highest mountain, so it sits at 2,600 meters above sea level, and it's got one of the highest concentration of rock art in the world, the most famous being the Brandberg White Lady. So, of course, all of our birding tours and our wildlife tours to Namibia, we're always very, very flexible. And if people are interested in the rock art and going seeing the White Lady, we're always able to fit that in and make a detour to go and see it. Often when you go to the White Lady, in that gap there where the White Lady painting is, I've had the rose eagle flying there before. Okay, we're off to the Eronga Mountains and to the Eronga area, region of Namibia. The Eronga Mountains are a great spot on any birding tour to Namibia, a site of some great birds and in sight of some of our endemics that we're looking for, our special birds we're looking for. And the scenery in here is also just absolutely spectacular. When we think about the Eronga Mountains or the Eronga area, for most birders, the first thing that comes to mind is your Hartlip spurfowl. This is the best place to see this species in Namibia. You can see them on the Dolomite section of the Etosha, but around the Eronga Mountains, the Eronga Wilderness Lodge, this is the place to get them. You need to be up very, very early in the morning. As the sun is rising, you'll hear the birds calling like this. And it's just amazing. You hear them calling like that, they'll jump onto a rock and they advertise the territory. And when you hear that, you need to scramble and get up there. We'll only call for a little bit early in the morning. You need to like find the bird on the call and then get great views on. So they can be a tough bird, but we do know some great spots in the Eronga area. Another absolutely stunning bird I absolutely love connecting with when I'm in Namibia is your white-tailed shrike. These birds are very, very common in the Eronga area. And then another one of Namibia's endemic or special birds. What they say they do occur in Angola as well is your rock runner. These birds will be on open rock faces and they run across the rocks. And also a spectacular bird. We do know a couple of places actually in Windhoek where we can get this bird as well. They're in Doornviljoen Nature Reserve. They have very, very good chances of them as well. So anyone only got a day or spending a day in Windhoek for business, we do offer a Windhoek day trip as well, where we can get things like your rock runner, orange-winged francolin, and some of your desert-adapted birds that are found. And Windhoek is actually quite a birdie city. And then you've heard me say that's your beautiful Verreaux's eagle, or your black eagle. They're actually in the Eronga area in the mountains. There's a spot where we know they are nesting, and often a walk towards where the nest site is, we often get great views of the birds in flight. From our lodge that we use in the Eronga area, they'll put out seed and they'll put out water, and the birds are attracted to the water. And while having breakfast and having meals, we get to enjoy some great birding. And some of the birds that will come down to the water are things like these beautiful Cape buntings, and then your rosy-faced lovebirds. It's always great seeing these lovebirds where they belong in the wild. So these lovebirds are indigenous to this part of Namibia. We do also get them around Windhoek, and it's where they're meant to be. Before I started traveling as a bird guide for nature travel birding and spending time in Namibia, I'd only ever seen these birds as pets in a cage. So it's always great to see them out in the wild free, and they'll make their nest in the cavities in the rocks that surround the Eronga area. And then often coming down to the bird bath, we've got these beautiful green-winged pitilias. Used to be called a Mulber finch. In my opinion, it's an absolutely fantastic and just a beautiful bird. We do also get black-faced waxbill, and we're always on the lookout for the black mongoose, which is endemic to the Eronga area. I've been lucky on a couple of visits to the area while walking around or watching the waterhole. I see the black mongoose coming out for a drink. They're very, very shy. They just got to sit there still, scanning the waterhole that is in front of that lodge. And then the rock hyrax, or your dassies, these are very, very common around the lodge. What I'm always interested or fascinated by these animals is genetically, they are the closest living relative to an elephant. They have the exact same foot structure as what an elephant does. It blows your mind. But yeah, genetically, they're the closest living relative. They look nothing like an elephant. And then I've been very, very lucky in the Eronga area. I think the animal must be resident in the area, often late afternoon, or even if we just go out for a short drive at night. Often come across the caracal that seems to be resident in the area. Not every tour, but I've been lucky on a few occasions. You get this caracal, also known as a lynx, that comes out. And this photograph I took of her actually coming down to the waterhole in the midday to drink. So it's always good when we're having a siesta during the day. Just check the waterhole. You never know what can come up there. Okay, so we're making our way now from the Eronga area down towards the Atlantic Ocean and towards Walvis Bay. And towards the coast, the Walvis Bay Lagoon, famous for its flamingos and some of its seabirds, its waders coming in. The lagoon is a protected area now along with the salt works, and it's got one of the highest concentrations of flamingos in the world. They do breed there, and we're very, very lucky. We get both species of flamingos that are present there, both the lesser and the greater flamingos. It is a UNESCO heritage site, so it is a protected area as well. One of the birds that we do target as we're making our way to Walvis Bay, so just before we come into the town of Swakopmund, there's a couple of areas, open areas that we check for this sought after bird, and this is your Gray's lark. It's absolutely amazing to believe a bird like this can thrive in an area that is basically just an open, looks like an open salt plant with a few dollar bushes scattered around. And that's where the bird lives and survives. And we know of a couple of areas we target and we get the bird on the trip. And then one of the main targets that we're looking for when we spend time along the coast driving between Swakopmund and Walvis Bay, we're looking for the Damara tern. Very, very small tern or black cap, and it's one of the main targets. for the trip and for this area, and we're lucky. They do come in there in summer, they breed. They'll actually come in and they breed in the sand dunes. The Namibian government is now protecting these areas, and we've also found a couple of individuals that overwinter. So we know, okay, even the lagoon in summer, if you go and scan the lagoon in a late afternoon when the tide drops, you'll get these Damara terns coming in to feed. That's always a special bird to connect with. And then we make our way through. These are great white pelicans along the lagoon with the lagoon that's protected. You can imagine it attracts in a wide variety of different birds. And quite often we get very, very big rafts of great white pelican in the lagoon. Curlew sandpipers, also in summer, often present in the lagoon, and we managed to. These was actually quite nice. It was in my trip last December. You could actually see these curlew sandpipers starting to go all russet like that and coming into their breeding plumage. And then beautiful birds like these pied avocets often are there in very, very big numbers in the lagoon. Some of our tern species, these are young Caspian terns. They haven't got their bright red bills yet. And some of the other terns that we get that have come into the area and onto the tern roost, we get common tern, we get swift tern, sandwich, and Arctic tern. As you can hear, the area is very, very good for seabirds. You can also go out from the points and near Pelican Point, and if the weather is favorable, early in the morning you can scan for seabirds, and you get very, very lucky. We also have some of the skewers, some of the jaegers come close, and you can, especially if you've got a scope, you can have some great luck. The lagoon always turns up some great rarities in summer. So you've had red knot there before, Eurasian oyster catcher, redneck phalarope seems to be coming to the area every summer. So the lagoon, it's always exciting spending time birding in the lagoon, because you can imagine you never really know what can show up. What's always amazing for me is when we spend time here, just the sheer numbers of birds. I mean, we have thousands of different waders, from your sandpipers, your ruffs, common red shanks, the terns. You heard those curlew sandpipers, the teals. It's just thousands of birds. There's just birds absolutely everywhere. And as a birder, it's always just fantastic. If you love your wader watching, this is definitely a place to spend a few days. And it's always fascinating and always great birding. I absolutely love spending the days we spend in the lagoon scanning between the different waders. Just absolutely amazing. You get some of your smaller little plovers. This is a 3-banded plover. The other plovers we get in the area is that chestnut banded plover. Beautiful bird. And we do also get gray plovers in the lagoon. And one of the special birds that we do get, they often are on the rafts. We have to go and check the areas, are our bank cormorants, our most endangered cormorants in Southern Africa. And there are a couple of bank cormorants that will come onto the cormorant roost just north of Walvis Bay. And the other cormorant that we see that is very common in the area is your crown cormorant and your Cape cormorant. These are also just spectacular birds, and we're lucky all along the coastline of Namibia between Walvis Bay, Swakopmund. We get onto the beach and walk up to the beach where there's a few rocks. You'll come across the African oyster catchers. They're just spectacular and such good looking birds, and they'll actually take oysters off the rocks and crack the oysters on the rocks and feed on the rocks. You heard me say sometimes in the salt works by the lagoon in summer, we get lucky and we have Eurasian oyster catcher coming, which is quite a rare bird for us down in Southern Africa. Another special bird that we get, this obviously not near the salt works, but just away from the salt works as we head inland towards the edge of the dune, as the big dunes of Sossusvlei and the big dunes start and the dune field starts. We target this bird. It's always a special bird to see, often said right where we start looking for the dune lark, and this is the bokmakiri. I'm just going to play you the call because it's got very, very nice call to him. Such a bubbly, such a nice call your bokmakiri has. It's a very, very nice special bird. And then, without further ado, Namibia's only true endemic bird. So a lot of these other birds that we've been through, your heart-lap spurfowl, your rock runner, the hornbill, some of the babblers, they are near endemic to Namibia. They do cross sometimes into Botswana or into southern Angola, but Namibia basically is the best place to go and see them. And some of us argue they should actually be endemic to Namibia, but the dune lark is Namibia's only true endemic bird, and this bird is found just outside of Walvis Bay in a place called Rooibunk. We go out there, we do a morning excursion out there before the end of the tour, and we go and we target this bird, and we know the place where it spent time walking in the dry riverbed, and then, yeah, touch wood, we've never missed this bird on a trip. Some of our other trips, when we spend time, we go down to Sossus Vlei. There's a couple of spots in Sossus Vlei where the big red dunes are, where we know of dune lark as well. It's very habitat specific. It needs dunes, so hence the name dune lark, but it needs dunes that have got vegetation at the base, basically. So thank you very much, folks. I really hope you enjoyed that birding virtual tour of Namibia, or our, what we call our NBZ, on the Namibia, Botswana, Zambia birding tour. I really hope you've enjoyed that. Thanks for tuning in and giving me your time. Let me know your feedback in the comment section, and yeah, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. And if you haven't seen my other YouTube videos, have a look. I've done a couple of birding virtual tours. And then find us on Facebook, Nature Travel Birding, and our sister company, Nature Travel Namibia. We're on Facebook. Check us out on the internet, see what tours, what we offer, and hopefully once this COVID madness is gone and it's over, we can meet in person on tour, and we can take you on a great birding and wildlife tour of Namibia, Africa, or anywhere in the world. I've done this as a fundraiser to try and make some money during this crisis when I cannot guide. So please, if you've enjoyed it and would like to make a donation, you'll see on the next slide my PayPal account. The link to my PayPal account is going to be up. But thank you very much, folks. Till we meet again, keep safe, stay well, and keep in touch. Cheers now. Bye.